Hello and welcome to the Shooting Outdoors channel, proudly supported by FMJ Gun Shop Dunchurch. These pellets seemed intriguing, and as Matt at FMJ Gun Shop was footing the bill, I was only too happy to try them. And they are the H&N Field Target Trophy Power in 177. So let's shoot the elephant in the room, the gingers, which is Geordie-fur ginger head, and you can see this by the ginger coloured images of the two pellets which stand out boldly on the tin. But these aren't hippie pellets, they're lead pellets that have been electroplated with a copper coat, so they're like hybrid hippie pellets, like a Prius. From what we've seen in magazines, and with the SOC still having to put some through the paces, hippie ammo, as we call it, has still yet to prove itself as a worthy replacement for lead pellets. So this is actually a good pellet to trial, as it should give us an idea of how copper gets on with the barrel as a coating. And while I'm on, let's just get another thing straight. In the big toy world, coating a projectile or slug or ball, whatever terminology you use, we call it jacketing. We're going to stick with coating though, because that's what's on the tin. But let's look at coating and jacketing as a principle first. So, the idea of coating on a pellet is to create a very thin shell that does a few jobs depending on application. One, it acts as a lubricant. Oil, for example, is lots of microscopic balls that act as a bearing between metal faces. Now, pellet coatings do the same job between the pellet and the barrel. As a pellet slides along the barrel, microscopic particles of the coating ball up to create a bearing between the two faces. Now, copper, I'm told, apparently does a better job than lead-based coatings, so there should be less drag acting on these FTTPs, allowing them to accelerate faster and to higher velocities due to lower friction coefficients. Now, we'll test this in another review to see if it's true, but I'm skeptical. Basically, what I want to do is make sure I've got lead, copper, and then full hippie ammo, just to have some side-by-side analysis. 2. It increases hardness without adding weight, so think of an egg or an orange skin. Both of those protect the liquid internal, which in this case we've got copper, which is harder than lead. But by how much? Now, H&N on their website say 20%, so these pellets should retain shape like a heavy pellet and still keep a flat trajectory due to the lighter internals. 3. It seals in the loose particles that can corrode or that are harmful if brought into contact with the body in some way. Now, we do this with asbestos, so why wouldn't we do it with lead? There are also other benefits of coating, but these are the most significant to a pellet or a projectile. Also, H&N are offering the Ginge Factor to Barracudas, Rabbit Magnums and the Spitzkugel pellets. Unboxing. Now, we like the H&N lids not just because they're a stackable twist lid design, but they actually give a lot of information about the pellet and its intended use. So, a rundown of this information says that there's 300 8.8 grain high accuracy corvid stroke target and plinking copper coated pellets, and breathe, which are good at any range in 177 4.5mm for 16 dual air guns. Now, that's a lot of information that you therefore expect to be accurate, or why even bother putting it on there? So have H&N set the bar high. Back of the tin is the H&N label. You probably won't be able to pick out the exact size at the end of the title, which says 4.5mm, but I'm not 100% sure that that's an exact measurement, so for this review I'm going to ignore it and just see what comes out in the data section. Now, I had to remove the tin tip, but I did take a picture of it, which sounds a little daft, but I did chuckle when I actually read it, and it just proves that the Germans do have a sense of humour. So inside the tin, it's pretty colourful with these Ginger copper dazzling us instead of grey lead. As you'll see later, the skirt wall is actually fairly thick, but I found a dozen or so with ding skirts, suggesting that it's actually a softer lead and they rely on keeping their shape from this copper coating. Should we accept a few dingers from the Gingers? You don't get any makeup pads from H&N, which I think is actually pretty poor when you consider that we've only got 300 pellets in a 500 pellet tin, so they will rattle about a bit, and this may have caused the issue with a dozen or so damaged ones. Quality. Let's look at the design of the pellet and journey through the quality from there. Now, we have slimmed down the detail in the drawings, as we've had quite a few offers from the Far East to buy them. Now, we're not advocates of it, so we're only going to put in what we talk about from now on. But the physical outlines of the pellet are still created to the same level of detail, just we're not showing it anymore. So we see a stout pellet with a cone shaped skirt bore, and the area of the bore that sits centrally in the length looks machined, which we saw in the 2-2 Field Target Trophy review. The skirt wall, as mentioned, is quite thick. One thing I did pick up on during the 32-piece sample was the skirt width is 0.21mm wider than the head diameter of 4.52mm. This means a good seal, that thick skirt wall is not going to flare unless the pellet material is soft. We saw that principle in work in the JSB RS review, where the thin wall skirt sort of expanded with a charge of air. Now I later found out that that's why many JSB pellets have a thin section in the wall, as it helps sealing, especially with springers, which is why the Remy got on well with them. Now they flare earlier in the cycle with a thinner wall, and it gets the pellet accelerating on the barrel, ensuring it's gone earlier in the recoiling phase, and less recoil gives you more accuracy with a spring rifle. Weight balance is awkward on these cone bore pellets, but I'd say these are 70-30 in favour of the head, which may make them a little bit flighty at range. So does this harder copper shell prevent deformation of the softer lead? Well, until we do H&N Field Target Trophy, like I said, we won't really know. What I do know is that they drove deep into the blue tack. Now the sides of the head pulled around the skirts quite evenly, which appeared to cause a change from a shuttlecock shape to more of a mushroom upon impact. Now I'm sceptical about coating as a shell making the pellet 20% stronger or harder. I don't think it actually works in this case. I do think they're going to be very efficient brain wreckers in the field, if I'm honest, and this is due to the deformation being very uniform. One thing that stands out is the skirt board deformation. The soft lead is more malleable, so the air charge also blows out the inside of the skirt, which aids sealing and power delivery by balancing out the thrust. So the latter is something that we started noticing on the RSs when it comes to springers, the internal skirt blowout being key to reducing recoil effects, which we discussed earlier. So whenever we see this, we're generally going to find that, or expect them to be springer friendly going forward. The 32-piece sample, skirt length set a new benchmark, and the remaining features are fairly consistent, but still by comparison kind of middle of the board. We didn't cover yet the weight, which is that they are the heaviest 177 that we've done yet. The mean weight of the samples was actually lower than the 8.8 grain specified at 8.65, with a plus or minus of 0.12 grains. So if they do like the S410s barrel, then the group should be fairly short, and in the long range they may suffer slightly, but I think that will be negligible really if your barrels match to them. Cost. Well then, 300 pieces should set you back around £7.58. This comes from the mean price of the pellets from the 3 data sources, which is, as always, a receipted price by the first 2 Google throw up. So FMJ was £7.99, countrywaygunshop.co.uk was £8.25, and finally airriflepellets.co.uk at £6.99. Now, to see what the cost would be for 500, I think in the Viroc F&T 2.2 review I made it so that the price was divisible, it's not even a word, to exactly 500 pieces. So 3 times 5 is 15, divide that by 3 is 5, so £7.74 divided by, or times by 5, sorry, is £12.90 for 500. So that's £13. So these better deliver them, because that is a lot of money for 177 pellets in my opinion, especially for 500. Now I'm not liking this whole half tin thing that pellet makers seem to be doing at the minute. We saw this on the Viroc F&T special review. I'll not point out either that it seems to be 2 German companies that are doing this, but right on that bomb, delivery. So this is indoors at 25 yards with the S410, and let's be honest with ourselves, it's actually a fairly mediocre performance overall. Once they lead in, or copper in should we say, they actually do a reasonable job, but the flyers are just a killer blows, and I'd say this is more likely caused by the extra space in the tin and the lack of a makeup pad to protect the pellets a bit. The result, I guess, is ding skirts causing some wild flyers. The mean group size then is 17.1mm, with the worst post lead in being 18.5mm. Now this is an acceptable group in principle because it's under or inside an inch at 25 yards, but in reality it's on the wrong side of the comfort zone. So clearly then we need to do some H&T Field Target Trophy pellets to benchmark off. But my thoughts are that these pellets won't set the world on fire. It's also pointing at hippie ammo being, I can't say a shite, but you get the gist. Guess the hippies care more about the ground being affected by lead than an animal writhing in pain while I wound his mates and wring their necks one by one because the hippie ammo just simply don't seem to cut it. Mind, saying that, lead comes from the ground, don't it? Kind of found a hole in their argument there, but I digress. Long range target and 5 shots in the S410. Now, it's not a 410 shotgun, I just want to say, but the target suggests that maybe one was used. But also, it appears that H&N got the long range bit on the tin wrong. They are, by all accounts, not a long range pellet in the S410 anyway. I did shoot some at 35 yards outdoors with the Walther Century, and I have to admit they actually seem to go well in it. Maybe then it's the copper acting as a better bearing, gets that pellet moving that little bit sooner in the piston stroke. Couple that with the flaring from the pellet skirt, and therefore we've got less recoil time for while the pellet's in the barrel. And now that the review's up, I can explore this a little bit further, but yeah, maybe worth a trial on your Springer if you spot somebody using them on the range. To summarise, they're nothing amazing, more capable at closer ranges, no clear evidence that the long range capability is there. With pre-charged rifles, it's looking okay for Springers, but again, it just seems a mediocre pellet to me. They score as follows, and cost is the first thing up, and it's a bit of a sore subject because they should by rights score a 2 when they cost £13 for 500. But rules are rules, and at £7.74 they're allowed to get a 3. Now normally you would hit them with, on the quantity side, you'd score them down on that because there's going to be less in the tin, or they're just going to be rubbish, in which case they get hit by delivery. But 300 pellets per tin means that that extra 50 allows them to score a 3. Not only that, but they throw a bit more egg in your face when you find the quality score is also a 3, because actually gauge R&R, dimensionally toleranced, pellet against pellet, they're actually pretty good in terms of quality. Now it's the groups which I'm actually glad that it scored poorly in, because I wouldn't want to score this, put this pellet at the top, it would just throw out everything that's happened. But 17.1mm, they score a 2. So the final score then is 53, which places it above the VMX Pels, but still well down on the chart. Summary: so let's not destroy the H&N Field Target Trophy powers because they're overpriced, underperforming pellets in the Air Arms S410. It's not very often that one rifle will fire every single pellet perfectly. Barrels do differ, even on the same model. I could pick up another S410, they may fire fine. Yeah, they're probably worth having a look at if somebody's got some on a bench. Personally, I wouldn't invest in a tin of them. Now, the Walther Century, being a Springer, that got on very well with them, and with a little mapping, I do wonder if the clay at a 100-yard challenge is actually a possibility. And the next view we do will be the 2.2 version of the FTTPs in the Walther RM8 and the Remy AR1. Now historically the RM8 has got on well with the H&N FTT, and it'd be great if the Remy got on with them as well. Personally though, I'll be giving these pellets a wide berth. I'll use them in the Century. As value for money, they don't really work for me. I also begrudge paying that amount of money for just 300 pellets. As always, feel free to comment, don't troll. We've got all the scores and the boards for the pellet reviews on our website, which is www.shootingoutdoors.co.uk. Strongly recommend you go on there, have a view. If you've got some opinions about, feel free to comment, as we said. Check out the Instagram page, which Tom's running, and we'll catch you in the next review. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.